Imagine waking up after a full year trapped in darkness, your body frozen, your mind screaming in silence. I did. My name is Julia Navarro, and this is the moment everything shattered. After 1 year in a vegetative state deep coma, I opened my eyes in the ICU of a hospital on the outskirts of Seattle. The white lights burned. Machines beeped slower as the breathing tube was removed. My fingers twitched weak but alive. Then the door opened. My parents, Robert and Diane, walked in with my sister Megan. No hug, no tears of relief. Just cold stares. Diane spoke first, flat and calm, like she was reading a grocery list. Addison, we placed her in foster care a long time ago. We thought you were going to die. Megan shrugged, her voice sharp and careless. You waking up is honestly just inconvenient. Everything was supposed to be done by now. The words hit like ice water. My daughter, my little Addison, handed over to strangers because they assumed I was gone forever. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared back at them, my hand clenching the sheet under the blanket until my knuckles turned white. Inside my head, one thought burned brighter than the hospital lights. I'm getting my daughter back. And I'm finding out exactly what they did while I was fighting to breathe. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you at your weakest moment, drop your story in the comments below. Share what happened. Hit like if you believe family should mean safety, not a knife in the back. Subscribe so you don't miss how one single letter changed everything and made them realize the person they tried to erase was never the one who was truly disposable. Let's keep going. The hospital room faded and memories rushed in like water breaking through a cracked dam. I let them come. I needed to remember who I was before the darkness swallowed me. My husband died when Addison was only 3, a car accident on I-405 during rush hour. One moment he was driving home from work, the next he was gone. I was 35, suddenly a widow with a toddler who kept asking where Daddy was. I didn't have time to fall apart. I had to keep going. I started working night shifts as a nurse at Overlake Medical Center in Bellevue. 12-hour shifts, sometimes 16 when they were short-staffed. The pay was decent, but the hours were brutal. I'd come home at dawn, kiss Addison's sleeping forehead, then collapse on the couch for a few hours before she woke up. I never complained. Every paycheck went straight into savings. I cut everything, no vacations, no new clothes, no dinners out. My wardrobe was the same scrubs and jeans I'd had for years. My car was 12 years old, leaking oil, but it still got me to work. I wanted one thing more than anything: a real home for us. Not an apartment with thin walls and noisy neighbors. A house with a yard where Addison could run without me worrying about traffic or strangers. I saved for 6 years, dollar by dollar. Overtime shifts, extra charting at home, refusing every invitation to go out. Finally, I had enough for a down payment. The house was in Kirkland, a quiet neighborhood 15 minutes from Bellevue. Small 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, but it had a backyard sloping down toward Lake Washington. The view wasn't fancy, just water, trees, and sky, but it felt like freedom. I painted the walls soft gray myself. I planted tulips along the walkway. Addison helped, her tiny hands covered in dirt, laughing when worms crawled out. We moved in on a rainy October afternoon. She ran from room to room, claiming the smaller bedroom as my castle. That night we sat on the floor eating pizza out of the box, and she said, "Mommy, this is our forever home." Weekends became sacred. We'd walk down to the lake trail, Addison skipping ahead, picking wildflowers, daisies, clover, sometimes blackberries when they were in season. I'd sit on a bench with my coffee watching her chase ducks or throw pebbles into the water. She loved the sound they made when they plopped. I taught her to skip stones, though most of hers just sank straight down. She didn't care. She'd clap anyway. In the evenings, especially in fall when the air smelled like wet leaves and pine, we baked. Chocolate chip cookies were her favorite. She stood on her little step stool measuring flour with serious concentration, her tongue poking out. I'd let her crack the eggs even when half the shell ended up in the bowl. We'd laugh, clean it out, start again. The kitchen would fill with cinnamon and vanilla. When the timer dinged, she'd press her nose to the oven door, eyes wide. "They're perfect, Mommy." We'd eat them, warm crumbs on our shirts, and she'd lean against me saying the same thing every time, "You're the most important person in my whole world." But even in those good years there were shadows. My sister Megan had always been the one who needed rescuing. She'd call at 2 in the morning crying about another bad breakup or another job she'd lost. I lent her money, $3,000 once, to pay off credit card debt. She promised to pay it back in installments. She never did. I never asked. I told myself family helps family. My parents favored her openly. "Megan's had it harder," Mom would say. "She's sensitive." "You're strong, Julia. You always were." They'd buy her gifts, new phone, new coat, while Addison and I got hand-me-downs. I swallowed the hurt. I told myself it didn't matter. Addison noticed, though. She was only 4 when Megan came over one Saturday and raised her voice because I wouldn't lend her more money. Addison hid behind my legs, eyes big and scared. Later that night she whispered, "I don't like when Aunt Megan yells." I hugged her tight. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." I kept telling myself the cracks were small, fixable. Family was still family. I never imagined those cracks would one day split everything wide open. The good days started to feel heavier. I could sense the shift even before it became obvious. Megan began showing up at the house more often unannounced, usually in the late afternoon, when I was just getting home from a shift. She'd walk in like it was her place, drop her bag on the kitchen table, and start talking about how hard things were. "Rent's due again," she'd say, or, "My car needs new tires." She never asked outright anymore. She just waited for me to offer. And I did too many times. 500 here, 200 there. I told myself it was temporary. She was my little sister. She'd get back on her feet. But she didn't. She lost one job after another, waitress, retail office temp. Each time she blamed someone else. The boss was unfair. The hours were impossible. The customers were rude. I listened. I nodded. I wrote checks. The money I'd saved so carefully for emergencies started disappearing. I stopped buying Addison new shoes when hers got tight. I canceled the cable. I told myself it was worth it if it kept peace in the family. My parents didn't help. They lived in a small condo in Redmond about 20 minutes away, and they'd always been closer to Megan. "She's struggling," Mom would say on the phone. "You've got a good job, Julia. You're strong." They'd send her care packages, groceries, gift cards, while Addison and I ate pasta 3 nights in a row. Dad would call occasionally, ask how work was, but never once asked if I needed anything. They believed Megan's stories completely. To them, I was the one who had it all together, so I didn't need help. Megan knew how to play it. She'd come over when Addison was napping, sit at the table with me, and sigh dramatically. "You don't know how lucky you are," she'd say. "Stable job, nice house, a kid who adores you. I've got nothing." I'd feel guilty, like my life was somehow hurting her. So I'd hand over more money, tell her things would get better. She'd hug me, say thank you, then leave with my debit card number or a promise to pay back next month. Addison started noticing. She'd see Megan's car pull up and tense. "Why does Aunt Megan always need stuff?" she asked once while we were folding laundry. I brushed it off. "She's going through a hard time, sweetheart. Families help each other." But inside, I felt the weight growing. The night shifts were wearing me down. I'd come home exhausted, head pounding, only to find Megan on my couch eating snacks from my pantry, complaining again. I started getting headaches that lasted days. I'd take ibuprofen, drink water, try to sleep when I could. It wasn't enough. The arguments were quiet at first. Megan would hint that I was selfish for not helping more. "You've got that big backyard, Julia. You could sell the house and help everybody." I'd change the subject. Mom would call after Megan talked to her and say, Megan says you're not being fair. She's your sister. I'd defend myself, explain I was already stretched thin. They'd sigh, say I was too proud. The calls ended with me feeling like the bad guy. I kept up appearances for Addison. Every weekend we still went to the park by the lake. She'd run ahead chasing geese, her ponytail bouncing. I'd sit on the bench pretending to watch her, but my mind was on the bills, on Megan's latest request, on how tired I felt all the time. Addison would come back sweaty and happy and ask, "Why does Aunt Megan get mad at you so much?" I'd pull her close, kiss her forehead. "Grown-up stuff, baby. Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay." But it wasn't. The headaches got worse. Sharp stabbing pain behind my eyes. Dizziness when I stood up too fast. I'd steady myself on the counter, breathe deep. Tell myself it was just stress. I kept working. Kept smiling for Addison. Kept hoping things would turn around. I was wrong. The dizziness wasn't just occasional anymore. It came in waves, stronger each time, like the room was tilting under my feet. That evening, I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for Addison's favorite pasta. The knife felt heavy in my hand. I reached for the salt and the world spun violently. My vision blurred. I grabbed the counter edge, but my legs gave way. I remember the sound of the knife clattering to the floor, the sharp pain as my head hit the tile, and one clear thought cutting through the chaos: Addison. She was in the living room coloring. She'd hear the crash. She'd come running. I tried to call her name, but nothing came out. Then everything went black. When awareness returned, it wasn't like waking up. It was more like floating in thick fog. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move. But I could hear. Sounds filtered in, slowly, distant at first, then clearer. Beeping machines. Soft voices of nurses. Footsteps in the hallway. And then voices I knew. Megan's tone was sharp, controlled, the way she sounded when she was trying to convince someone. She mentioned Addison's name several times. Foster care drifted through the haze, more than once repeated, like a decision already made. Mom's sigh was heavy, worried. Dad murmured something low, reluctant. At one point, Megan's voice cut through sharper. "We need to handle this quickly before it gets worse." The words hung there, tense and urgent. I couldn't make out the full sentences. My mind grasped at fragments, trying to piece them together. Addison. Foster care. Handle quickly. A cold knot formed in my chest. Something was wrong with my daughter. They were talking about her planning something, but I was trapped inside my own body, unable to ask, unable to scream. Days, or maybe weeks, passed in that strange half-world. Time didn't exist there, only sounds and sensations. A hand touching mine, sometimes cool and unfamiliar. The rustle of sheets. The low hum of conversation outside my door. Megan's voice returned often, always with that edge of impatience. Addison again. Foster care again. Mom's breathing sounded shaky, like she was holding back tears. Dad stayed quiet most of the time, but when he spoke, it was hesitant, almost apologetic. I strained to understand, but the words slipped away like smoke. All I knew was fear, raw, helpless fear that they were taking her away from me while I lay here powerless. I tried to fight it. I focused on small things. Wiggle a finger, twitch an eyelid, make a sound. Nothing happened. My body ignored me. The frustration built inside, burning. I pictured Addison's face, her wide eyes when she colored, her laugh when we played at the lake. Was she scared? Was she asking for me? The thought twisted like a knife. I couldn't protect her. I couldn't even call her name. The voices became less frequent over time. Visits shortened. Megan's tone grew more certain, less anxious. Mom and Dad sounded resigned. I caught fewer words, but the name Addison still came up, always paired with that same cold phrase, foster care. Each time I heard it, the knot in my chest tightened. I didn't know the details. I didn't know how or why. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty: they thought I wasn't coming back. and they were making decisions without me. That realization kept me anchored. In the darkness, when everything else faded, that thought burned steady: my daughter needed me. Whatever they were doing, whatever they had planned, I had to survive this. I had to wake up. I had to find out the truth. The fog in my head lifted slowly, like curtains parting after a long night. My eyes opened fully this time. The room was real: white walls, IV stand, the faint smell of antiseptic. I could feel my chest rising and falling without help. My fingers moved when I told them to. I was back. A nurse came in first, checking monitors, smiling when she saw my eyes tracking her. She spoke softly, asked if I knew where I was. I nodded, throat too dry to speak. She adjusted the bed so I could sit up a little. Then she left to call the doctor. Not long after, the door opened again. Mom, Dad, and Megan walked in. The air changed instantly, thick, heavy, uncomfortable. They stood near the foot of the bed, none of them coming closer. Mom held a plastic cup of water like it was a shield, her fingers trembling just enough to make the surface ripple. Megan stared at her phone, thumbs scrolling absently. Dad kept his head down, arms crossed tight across his chest. No one said, "Thank God you're alive." No one reached for my hand. They just stood there waiting for something. I watched them carefully, taking in every small movement. Mom's eyes darted to the door like she wanted to leave. Megan's jaw was set, lips pressed thin. Dad shifted his weight from one foot to the other. I didn't ask about Addison. I didn't need to. Their faces told me everything. They weren't relieved. They were unsettled. Tense. Like people who'd made plans and now saw those plans unraveling. Mom's hand shook harder on the cup. A drop of water spilled over the rim and landed on the floor. She didn't notice. I felt heat rise behind my eyes, a burning pressure, but no tears fell. My hands stayed hidden under the blanket, fingers curling into fists until my nails bit into my palms. The pain grounded me, kept me sharp. I studied them like strangers. Mom avoided my gaze. Megan finally looked up, met my eyes for half a second, then dropped back to her screen. Dad cleared his throat but said nothing. The silence stretched. I let it. I wanted to see what they would do next. Mom finally spoke, voice thin. "The doctors said you're stable now." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, almost disappointed. Megan put her phone away, crossed her arms. "Yeah. They said you might even go home soon." Her tone was flat, careful. I didn't respond. I just looked at them. Mom set the cup on the tray table, hands still unsteady. Dad finally lifted his head, but his eyes stopped at my shoulder, not my face. Megan shifted, uncomfortable. None of them sat down. None of them asked how I felt. They were waiting for me to speak first, to fill the space, to make it easier for them. I didn't. Instead, I turned my head toward the nurse call button. My arm felt heavy, but I reached it, pressed it once. The light came on. Mom's eyes widened slightly. Megan frowned. Dad took a small step back. A nurse appeared quickly. I managed a hoarse whisper. "Can you call a lawyer for me, family law if possible?" The nurse nodded, no questions. She left to make the call. The room went even colder. Mom's mouth opened, closed again. Megan's eyes narrowed. Dad rubbed the back of his neck. They exchanged glances, quick, guilty. I saw it all. They knew something was coming. They knew I wasn't going to let this go quietly. I leaned back against the pillow, breathing steady. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. Inside, though, everything had shifted. The shock was still there, raw and deep, but something harder had taken root beneath it. Resolve. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I was going to get them myself. Mom spoke again, voice cracking just a little. "Julia, we were just trying to do what was best." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She knew I didn't believe her. Megan stepped forward finally. "You've been out for a long time." Things changed. Her voice had that same edge I'd heard in the haze, controlling, defensive. I met her gaze. Held it. She looked away first. The nurse returned. The social worker will bring a list of legal aid contacts tomorrow morning. You can make calls then. I nodded. Thanked her. She left. Mom, Dad, and Megan stayed a few more minutes, shifting awkwardly. No one spoke. Finally, Mom said they should let me rest. They filed out without goodbyes, without promises to come back soon. The door clicked shut. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the quiet settle. My hands were still clenched. I opened them slowly, staring at the red marks my nails had left. The pain felt good. It reminded me I was alive, and I was going to fight. Tomorrow I would start asking questions. Tomorrow I would begin taking back what was mine. The decision to call a lawyer stayed with me like a heartbeat. It wasn't anger yet, just clarity. I needed someone who understood the law, someone who could help me piece together what had happened while I was gone. Physical therapy started the next morning. A young therapist named Sarah came in with a walker and a gentle voice. She helped me sit up fully, then stand, legs shaking like they'd forgotten how to hold weight. Each step felt impossible. My muscles had wasted away in the bed. But I pushed. I had to. Sarah counted reps, encouraged quietly. "You're stronger than you think," she said. I didn't feel strong. I felt fragile. But every small movement reminded me I was still here, still fighting. Between sessions, I met Thomas Reed. He arrived the following afternoon carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a plain gray suit. He was in his late 50s, calm eyes behind wire glasses. He specialized in family law and property disputes, he explained, and he'd worked many cases involving CPS and guardianship issues. He sat beside my bed, listened without interrupting as I told him everything I could remember: the coma, the fragments of voices, the name Addison, and foster care echoing in my mind. I didn't have proof yet, just suspicion. He took notes, carefully asked precise questions. Did I have power of attorney documents? Had I signed anything giving anyone guardianship? I shook my head. I never had. He left, promising to start digging. "I'll pull records from CPS and the county clerk," he said. "We'll see what's been filed in your name." The days blurred into a routine: therapy in the morning, rest in the afternoon, quiet questions at night. My body slowly responded. I walked short distances with the walker, then without. The headaches faded. My voice grew steadier. But my mind never rested. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Addison's face, smaller, scared, alone somewhere. I needed answers. Thomas returned a week later. He sat down, face serious. "I've got some findings," he began. CPS had an open case on Addison. The initial report came from Megan. She'd called the hotline, claimed you were permanently incapacitated with no guardian in place. She provided documents, a medical summary from the hospital, and a signed statement saying you'd left no instructions for care. The signature on that statement was supposed to be yours. It wasn't. The handwriting didn't match samples from your old checks and forms. It was forgery. My stomach dropped. Megan had filed it. She'd reported me as unfit, unable to care for my own child. CPS investigated briefly. Hospital records confirmed the coma and placed Addison in temporary foster care. No family member stepped forward to take her as kinship care. They said it was safer that way. Thomas slid a folder across the tray table. "This is the court notice. It arrived at your house, but your sister picked it up. She never forwarded it." I opened it with shaking hands. Official letterhead from King County Superior Court. Summons to a guardianship hearing. Petition to determine parental fitness. Investigation into possible abandonment and document fraud. Hearing date set for 3 weeks from now. I stared at the paper. 3 weeks. Addison had been in foster care for over a year, and this was the first I'd heard of it officially. Thomas continued. "There's more. Your savings account, joint emergency fund you kept for the house. A large withdrawal was made 6 months ago, $22,000. The signature on the bank form matches the forged one on the CPS document. Same handwriting. I felt the room tilt again, but not from weakness. Rage. Pure, cold rage. Megan hadn't just reported me. She'd been living in my house. Thomas had driven by. The curtains were different. A new car in the driveway. Neighbors said a woman matching Megan's description had been coming and going for months, making repairs, replacing furniture. She'd told them she was taking care of the place while her sister was ill. My house. My daughter. My money. All taken while I lay unconscious, fighting to breathe. Thomas leaned forward. We can file for emergency custody return based on the forgery. CPS will have to explain why they didn't verify the signature. We can also move to freeze any remaining assets and start a civil suit for fraud and conversion. But the hearing is key. That's where we prove you're fit. The report was false, and the documents were faked. I nodded slowly. My voice was steady when I spoke. What do I need to do? He outlined the steps: medical clearance to show I was recovering, character references, proof of income, and home stability. He'd subpoena bank records, CPS files, witness statements from neighbors. We had to move fast. He left with a promise to file motions the next day. I sat alone in the room, the court notice still in my hand. The paper felt heavy, like it carried the weight of everything stolen. I folded it carefully, placed it on the side table. My body was healing. My mind was sharper than ever. Megan thought I was gone for good. She thought she'd won. She was wrong. The court notice lay on the table beside my bed for days. I read it over and over, memorizing every line. The hearing was set for King County Superior Court in Seattle. Guardianship determination. Investigation into abandonment and document fraud. I folded it carefully, placed it in my bag. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The day arrived. I dressed in simple clothes, a plain blouse and slacks the nurse had brought from home. My legs still felt unsteady, but I walked without the walker now. Thomas Reed picked me up from the hospital entrance. He drove in silence most of the way, giving me time to prepare. The courthouse was a tall gray building, downtown, steps wide and imposing. I took them slowly, one hand on the rail, the other clutching my folder of medical clearance papers. Inside the family courtroom was small, wood-paneled, quiet, except for the low murmur of lawyers and clerks. The judge was a woman in her 60s, glasses low on her nose, expression neutral. CPS caseworker Karen Lopez was already there, standing near a side door. She nodded at me, professional calm. Thomas guided me to the petitioner's table. Then the door opened again. Megan walked in first, followed by Mom and Dad. They looked older than I remembered. Mom's hair was thinner, Dad's shoulders stooped. Megan wore a neat dress, hair pulled back, but her eyes were red-rimmed. She glanced at me once, then looked away. The judge called the case. In re guardianship of Addison Navarro. Karen Lopez spoke first. She described the placement, temporary foster care after a report of parental incapacity. No family kinship option pursued. Monthly check-ins showed no contact from any relative. The child has been stable in care, she said, but the mother has now recovered and is petitioning for return. Thomas stood. He presented my medical records, discharge summary, therapy notes, neurologist clearance. Ms. Navarro suffered a severe stroke, but has made significant recovery. She is physically capable and legally fit to resume custody. He handed over the forged documents side by side with my known signatures. These were submitted to CPS without consent. Handwriting analysis confirms they are not hers. Megan shifted in her seat. The judge asked her to speak. She stood, voice trembling. I made the report because Julia was in a coma. We didn't know if she'd wake up. I thought Addison needed stability. I was trying to protect her. She paused, tears starting. I've been struggling. Debts, no job. I thought if I could use the house, sell some things, I could help everyone. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted to save the family. The judge looked at her steadily. You filed false documents. You withdrew funds from Ms. Navarro's account without authorization. You occupied her home. Explain that. Megan's shoulders shook. I was scared. I thought Julia wasn't coming back. I needed money to pay bills. Mom and Dad are old, they can't work. I thought it was temporary. Thomas interjected. Temporary or not, it was theft and fraud. The bank records show $22,000 withdrawn. The signature matches the forged CPS form. Mom spoke up then, voice small. We didn't know about the money. Megan said it was for expenses. Dad stayed silent, head down. The judge turned to Karen Lopez. Has there been any support from the family during placement? Karen shook her head. None. No visits, no financial contribution, no contact. I sat still listening. My heart pounded, but I kept my face calm. The judge reviewed the papers, then looked at me. Ms. Navarro, do you wish to address the court? I stood slowly. My voice was quiet but steady. I want my daughter back. That's all. The judge nodded. She ruled quickly. Custody is returned to the mother effective immediately. The report of incapacity was based on false documents. CPS will close the case upon transfer. Further investigation into fraud and abandonment will proceed separately. I exhaled. The words felt like air after drowning. Karen led me to a side room. Addison was there, sitting on a chair, clutching a stuffed bear. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was longer, eyes wide and wary. When I stepped closer, she shrank back against the caseworker. It's okay, sweetie, Karen said gently. This is your mom. Addison stared. She didn't move. I knelt slowly, keeping distance. Hey, baby, I whispered. It's me. Mommy's here. She blinked. Recognition flickered, then fear again. She shook her head. You were gone. The words cut deep. I swallowed hard. I was sick. But I'm better now. I came back for you. She looked at Karen, then back at me. Tears welled. She took one small step forward, then another. I opened my arms. She hesitated, then rushed in. I wrapped her tight, feeling her small body shake against mine. Her hair smelled like shampoo and crayons. I held her, rocking gently, tears finally falling into her hair. She clung harder. Don't leave again, she whispered. I won't, I promised. Never. Outside the courtroom, Thomas waited. We'll file for eviction tomorrow, he said. They have to vacate your house. The court can enforce it. I nodded. Addison was still in my arms, head on my shoulder. Mom, Dad, and Megan stood in the hallway. Mom reached out, but I turned away. Megan's face crumpled. Julia, please. I looked at her. You made your choices. Now live with them. We left without another word. Addison held my hand the whole way to the car. She didn't speak much, but she didn't let go. The drive home from the courthouse was quiet. Addison sat in the back seat, clutching her stuffed bear, staring out the window at the passing trees. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, afraid she'd disappear again if I looked away too long. She didn't speak much. Neither did I. Words felt too small for what had happened. We pulled into the driveway of our house in Kirkland. The place looked different. The front door had a fresh coat of paint, navy blue, not the soft gray I'd chosen years ago. Curtains in the living room were new, heavy, and dark. Megan's car was gone, but the signs of her presence lingered everywhere. I stepped inside slowly. The air smelled unfamiliar, different cleaner, different candles. The couch was replaced with a sleek leather one. The coffee table I'd painted myself was gone. Photos of Addison as a baby, our photos were missing from the walls. In their place were generic prints. Addison hesitated at the threshold. This is home, she asked, voice small. I knelt beside her. It was, and it will be again. She nodded, but her eyes stayed wide, uncertain. Thomas Reed filed the eviction paperwork the next week. It moved fast. The court had already ruled the occupation unauthorized. A sheriff's notice was posted on the door. Mom, Dad, and Megan had 30 days to vacate. They didn't fight it. They packed quietly and left without saying goodbye. I didn't watch them go. I didn't need to. The criminal case followed. The prosecutor in King County charged Megan with forgery in the second-degree Class B felony under Washington law. The forged consent form for CPS and the bank withdrawal signature were enough. $22,000 taken without authorization. Combined with abandonment, 12 months of no contact, no support. The court terminated any remaining parental or grandparent rights for Mom, Dad, and Megan. They were ordered to pay restitution and fines totaling over $40,000. The record would follow them for life. Jobs would be harder. Background checks would flag them. They would carry the consequences forever. I didn't go to the sentencing. I didn't need to see it. I had already closed the door. Addison and I started over slowly. The first thing I did was change the locks. Then I began undoing the changes Megan had made. We painted the walls back to gray. I found our old photos in a box in the garage and hung them again. The backyard had been neglected, overgrown weeds, empty planters. We worked together on weekends. Addison helped me plant tulips along the path to the lake view. She dug small holes with her hands, dirt under her nails, smiling when worms appeared. We bought a new bird feeder and watched sparrows come. Little by little, the house started to feel like ours again. Addison took longer to trust. She'd wake up at night sometimes, checking if I was still there. I'd sit with her, hold her hand until she fell asleep again. We talked about what happened, simple words, age-appropriate. Some people make bad choices, I told her. But that doesn't mean you're not loved. She nodded, but the fear lingered in her eyes. I didn't push. I just stayed. Every day I showed up. Months passed. She started sleeping through the night. She laughed more freely. One evening, while we sat on the back porch watching the sun set over the water, she leaned against me and said, "I'm glad you came back, Mommy." I kissed the top of her head. "I'll always come back for you." I never spoke to my family again. No calls, no messages, no visits. The silence was my boundary. I didn't forgive them. Forgiveness would have meant pretending what they did was okay. It wasn't. They chose convenience over love. They chose control over respect. They lost us both. Looking back, I see the truth clearly now. Family isn't always safety. Sometimes it's the source of the deepest wounds. Real love doesn't demand sacrifice without limits. It requires boundaries, mutual respect, and accountability. I learned that the hard way. The law protected me when my family didn't. It gave me a path to reclaim what was mine, not through revenge, but through truth and evidence. It showed me that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's how you teach your children they deserve dignity, too. To anyone reading this or listening, if someone you love hurts you, especially when you're at your weakest, you don't owe them your forgiveness. You owe yourself protection. Set the line. Hold it. Even if it means walking away forever. Because peace isn't found in pretending everything is fine. Peace is found in knowing your worth and defending it. Addison and I sit on the porch most evenings now. She points at the lake, tells me stories about school, about her friends. The house is ours again. The garden is blooming. And every night when I tuck her in, she says the same thing she used to. "You're the most important person in my whole world." I say it back. And I mean it more than ever. This is our story. It isn't pretty. It isn't easy. But it's honest. And that's enough.